Howdy, Joe here, and I'm gonna chat around a while about being a Canadian and a Canadian point of view on quite a number of other things. And I got this backdrop of maple leaves and sunlight and the play of the breeze and the light across the leaves can be quite beautiful. And I don't need a flag to show my color. I got lots of colors. And and it can be funny, you know. Maple trees can grow in many places. Um, of course, it's a huge world with so much going on, and it's almost a fire hose of news on a daily basis, and it gets kind of tough to be clear and honest sometimes. So that's a part of what I'll try to do. Um, but backing up a bit, a person with a voice. That's actually a mark of a citizen. A citizen. A citizen of a country has more than just a vote. They've got a voice. And they're not alone. Gee, um, and of all the countries in the world, to get to be a Canadian, golly gee. I live near the Peace Arch on the Pacific coast, and the Pacific is the biggest ocean on this planet. They talk about their pond. My pond's a little bigger. Not all of us are size queens though. Um, I've got a bit of a quirky sense of humor, point of view, and just as an aside, you notice, whoops, that uh pocket of color. It reminds you of Ontario. Not exactly, but kind of close, and the Great Lakes to the south, Hudson Bay to the north. Manitoba line ain't too clear, but in the Ottawa River, well, anyway, it's a vague kind of they could tweak it to fit and have a secondary lowercase casual flag, an informal flag. As a citizen, while it's a valid voice, is a solo voice and doesn't speak for the whole country. Um, I'm just a person in a place coping with a fire hose of news and maybe some things to say. Um, and where to start? Uh, a bit of introduction, I guess. I'm an odd bird. Um, I've got a Bachelor of General Studies from SFU. Um, 14 departments-ish. But continue to study on my own various interests and topics and crafts and artistries. There's so much to explore. And when it comes to being a citizen, not only do I nod to um, neighborhood councils and political parties and parliament and the parliamentary process and republics and democracies and oodles of flavors of modes of social exercise communication that assist functional utility. Does it get the thing done? Is it useful? Um, and in other words, I lean into the pragmatics and evidence. Um, Citizens, actually, I'm um, a fan of Montaigne, Shakespeare, and Plutarch, uh, and so am acquainted with several flavors of citizenship. And while the citizen soldier, always on standby to defend home, is a great classic model. And that citizen, with equity in the community and voice, that's where the polis is born. Policy, politics, beliefs in the discussion of citizens. And yeah, I'd like to practice a bit of that if I may. Um, and so I'm not speaking authoritatively. I'm speaking more creatively and exploringly. Uh, okay, so a Canadian citizen checks in with the head of state, Mark Carney. Gee, might I have a word? Or we chat? I'm a great admirer and to thank you very kindly for bringing your competencies into service. You're a sort of extraordinary. Wow. Well, I get sirens out the window and stuff. Don't worry about it. Uh, um, I don't know much, and actually I haven't even read values cover to cover. I've only skimmed a little bit. Um, in other words, I'm behind in my homework by miles. Um, and I spent 2 years in banking. This may be of interest. Um, th- the big six have data centers in each province, and that's where major clearing happens, like 1 million, 2 million transactions a night. This is before it was all turned into data. It still wrote on paper, and it was like living in the middle of a blizzard, often. And you might like this. I came in by way of an audition. Um, a big chore of rotating out the records that were more than 7 years old. They got to keep records that long and then they can be uh, forgotten with summaries. Anyway, uh, that was a 1 month, 6 month, 6 week job and learned a bunch. But I was also a kind of competitive, and also it was a chance for the staff in the data center to meet all the new candidates because we didn't know it was an audition, but they did. And I kind of got invited into a full-time job, one that nobody else wanted. And that was the junk desk. And it's kind of like at the bottom of the data center in the tracing department where, you know, the final reconciliations of items are resolved on a day by day basis. And It was an amazing job in multiple dimensions. And so I'm acquainted with the circulation of the monetary system, and I can scout, and tracing and accountability can be thrilling exercises for me sometimes. And I'll confess that while learning the post, double shifts were semi-often, and there were even a couple triple shifts, that kind of pressure. And after learning a whole bunch, I could take a bundle of a few $1 billion and have it dealt with 6, 7 hours. Like, step off the pressure point and walk with the team and maybe make some useful moves for others, you know, that kind of thing. So, I really like your banking, and gosh, a shared interest to mention. Um, how the bit about banking that you were talking about that I would like to reinforce from my um lowly position at the bottom of the data center is that Trump is not a break or an error. He's actually a rupture to crucial systems in multiple dimensions. And when he talks shifting tariffs from 100% to 50% to 15%, he's always taking a cut off of whatever's going on. And he doesn't realize that most of finance isn't working in percents, it's working in basis points. And that isn't per meal, as in 1 per 1,000. It's in 1 per 10,000. And the whole system is watching basis point fluctuation, and Trump is ramming through fluctuations 2 orders of magnitude or more louder than the system is used to. And so his ruptures are spreading multiple insanity through currencies and transactions. And more businesses and ethicists and professors should be asserting these points in public, as silence readily turns to consent. And I gotta speak up. Sometimes silence feels criminal. Um, oh, all that's downerish for me. A totally different point and more on climate. Uh, I'm a disabled senior now with visits from care aide to assist with transfers from wheelchair to bed. And thank you very kindly for having such a system. And gee, uh, we get on okay. Um, I mentioned that. Oh, the heat dome a couple of years ago. The carriage. I'm lucky. I've got a really nice place. Again, an affordable rental, and I thank you very kindly. Um, the Carrieds were devastated by how many people they were finding deceased in single room occupancy places where the heat exceeded life. And then there was the fire in Lytton, Fraser Canyon, a whole village community. And then up in the coal sands, or tar sands, the Fort McMurray, that huge fire. Um, Evacuation, 1,000. Anyways, got me to thinking we should be building defenses against these sorts of things. And in a nod back to our traditions, Canada begins with a village. And the longhouses of the Huron Confederacy and the ways in which those councils integrated 6 nations, Longhouse Council, as a political model. Um, the American revolutionaries do give considerable chops to classic Greek and Rome, and the Venetian Republic was one of their models to build the American Republic. Uh, but I still love Athens and a whole bunch of others. Um, in other words, a country should invite vigorous citizenry. And the polis, there has to be a polis place in a neighborhood, like a talking circle in a park. Because when I was a kid, finding a rational adult, to be honest with, seemed in short supply, you know? Oh, so, gee. Um, the Longhouse and the Igloo. And, like, Fort McMurray could have used a fireproof barn garage that would fit 1,500 people. Fireproof, right there. So the fire blows through, they all survive. And fireproof hempcrete. Gee, incredible stuff. A carbon sink, um, resists mold, can last half a millennium. Anyway, um, an igloo and a big garage don't always have to fit huge numbers. Lytton might be 300, or maybe make 500 room for tourists to share community, flow through, leave a dime, viable community. Um, okay, so a dome, igloo-ish, whatever, maybe even glassy, but then Quonsets spreading out from it, like might be 2, might be 4, might be 8, varying sizes, varying purposes defined by the community. And I'd suggest including not just a rocket mass heater stove or three, lessons in thermodynamics, but also a way to share an experience of looking serious cold in the eye, experience which most of the world isn't acquainted with, along with an evening and night in a bed so warm, so comfortable, comforting, that, that people might sigh in amazement. We might offer winter honeymoon as a sideline, folks who maybe want to make our acquaintance. And that could be not just a money maker, but a friend maker, you know? And so, parked on a highway intersection, a community for 400, and half of it invested, and half of it worked for and paid off. In other words, teaching multiple competencies in community. And not only having a central community with a hearth and a talking circle, but out in the wings and in the backyards, there can be some space for privacy, because some of us have other things to think about and need time to breathe, you know? And it's making places for the homeless folk, because what we got now ain't working. Wow. And if we can afford to be generous to our own, we can learn to be generous with others. The flag's still at half-mast, 2 weeks past the school shooting. Odd one out, explodes. It's rough. Oh. I got more than a few odd one out stories. Thought maybe I should share a few, but it's kind of personal, you know? And gotta figure out a way to say it right, or righter. So, there'll be some school stories, maybe. Yeah. And that means a bigger chat than a few minutes or an off the cuff. It means developed consideration, including evidence and witness testimony. And parts of that are difficult too. Uh, Things to chat about. Actually, more to the point, a line on my mind. Deliver us from evil. Don't know what I can do, but I can maybe say a few things that might be useful. And so I'm gonna wrap this bit here. and do a piece on that, like 15, 20 minutes, and then some stories on Odd One Out, and also suggestions for better, and numerous other things. Anyways, communication is a dance that takes practice and consideration, and so one step at a time. Gee, a polish to speak with equal citizen. Wow, how often do we do that? Really? Not for now. Be well. Be back soon. Ciao. Love ya.